In the heart of Velkaretha's blood-orange jungles, life was dictated by dominance. The Empress Felines, apex predators with bodies of muscle-wrapped grace and psionic resonance, were feared across 12 systems. Among them, the birth of a cub was a sacred event, for it came only once in an empress's lifetime. But when the reigning matriarch of the Pride of Kareth bore her offspring, the moment turned to silence. The cub was small, frail by their standards. One eye remained shut, its fur patchy, breast shallow. Tradition was not kind to the weak. The Empress gave it a glance, turned her back, and left it in the thorns to die. That was the way. Mercy was weakness. Strength demanded purity. 2 clicks east, a lone human, Dr. Elias Rain, moved through dense undergrowth, his worn exosuit humming softly with each cautious step. A xenobiologist assigned to study non-interference ecological patterns, his mission had gone sideways months ago. Now, surviving was a daily ritual. Yet it wasn't the harsh terrain or local fauna that arrested him this day. It was the soft, guttural rasp of breath, a sound too raw, too desperate. At the base of a jagged obsidian rock formation, he found it. The cub, curled into itself, ribs showing beneath soot-black fur, mewed with a sound that seemed to echo into his chest. One eye blinked open, unfocused. Blood matted its hind leg. Around it, flies danced lazily. Elias froze, instincts warring. This was a creature bred to command, to kill, one day destined to tower over most species. But here, now, it was no more dangerous than a half-drowned kitten. He knelt slowly. "You're not supposed to be here alone," he whispered. The translator chip in his larynx wouldn't help. This wasn't about language. It was about choice. And Elias made one. Lifting the cub was not easy. Its body was heavier than its size suggested, dense musculature hidden beneath sickly skin. It whimpered but didn't resist. Back at his shelter, a camouflaged ridge bunker grown from bioreactive resin, he placed the cub on a heat pad, cleaned its wounds, injected a nutrient cocktail synthesized from his last few emergency rations. He didn't name it. Not yet. Survival first. Days blurred. The cub clung to life through fever spikes, convulsions, and long, terrifying silences. Elias monitored vitals, recorded biometric data, and fed it with a syringe when it couldn't lift its head. He slept in short shifts, waking at the slightest movement. His logs, once dry with scientific detachment, grew personal. Cub's neural responses show unpredictable empathy markers. Or maybe I'm projecting. Hell, it gripped my finger today. On the 7th night it stood. Wobbled, yes, but stood. Its eye, now both open, held something that wasn't instinct. It didn't lash out. It watched. Measured. Chose not to strike. Elias, crouched nearby, exhaled slowly. "Sarah," he said aloud. "I'm calling you Sarah." Naming wasn't protocol. But nothing about this was. The following days brought rapid changes. Sarah gained weight. Her fur began to glow faintly under Velkaretha's moons, a sign of psionic awakening. Elias taught her to eat from a bowl, then from his hand. He fashioned crude toys to channel her hunting reflex, bundled vines with stones, remote-controlled drones, anything to stop her from shredding the walls. She was strong. Stronger than he expected. Once, she lunged at a flitting insect and shattered a stone slab beneath her. But violence wasn't the only thing in her. One night, when a storm split the sky and Elias grunted in pain from an old spinal injury, Sarah padded over. She pressed her forehead against his chest. No sound. Just contact. Her breath synced with his. Weeks passed. Sarah's understanding of him deepened. She followed hand signals, responded to vocal cues. When Elias wept at an old message from Earth, she sat beside him, unmoving. Not understanding grief, but sensing it. Mirroring calm. In his recordings, Elias noted, "She doesn't just survive. She learns. Reacts. Adapts. Faster than anything I've seen. Not out of duty. Out of connection?" Once, she caught a native predator, a horned vorik. Instead of killing it, She looked at Elias, eyes searching. He said nothing. The Vorik fled. Syrah led it. What grew between them wasn't dominance. It wasn't ownership. It was the quiet, fragile bond built between two creatures who had no reason to trust, and every reason to fear. But trust they did. Through shared breath, silent watchfulness, and the subtle, invisible thread only living beings could feel. She no longer flinched when he approached. She responded to his tone, tempered her claws. She was no longer just a cub. She was his. And he? He had started alone on a hostile world, his purpose reduced to survival. Now he had a reason to stay. Syrah grew faster than Elias could document. Her frame doubled in size within weeks, muscles layering beneath her obsidian fur. Her claws could tear through carbon steel, and her psionic aura began to interfere with nearby electronics. Every day, her instincts pushed her toward violence, dominance, and aggression. But Elias refused to let her fall into that path. He wasn't raising a predator. He was raising a person. He adapted quickly. Feeding her by hand was replaced with a custom dispenser designed to challenge her reflexes. She hated it at first, slashing it open multiple times, but eventually she began to understand it wasn't a punishment, it was a lesson. Elias shifted his role from caretaker to mentor, embedding human logic into her routines. He integrated gesture-based commands into his teaching, layering them with tone recognition to build a language that worked even when her psychic surges scrambled equipment. She tested him constantly. Growls, displays of dominance, sudden lunges. Once she pinned him to the ground, snarling, eyes lit with wild energy. Elias didn't resist. He stared at her, unblinking, and calmly said, "Control it." Her breath slowed. The snarl faded. She stepped back. That was the last time she tried to dominate him. To train her mind as much as her body, Elias reconstructed a broken learning cube from his pack. It became her first interface with structured thinking. He loaded it with puzzles, emotional simulations, and scenarios drawn from Earth's archives. Syrah was drawn to one simulation above all: stories of loyalty. Wolves, dogs, even human soldiers. It fascinated her. These creatures weren't the strongest, but they protected. Defended. She watched them over and over. Elias noticed. "You like defenders?" he asked. She responded with a rumbling sound that wasn't quite speech, but carried intent. He began teaching her language in earnest after that. She struggled with human syllables. Her vocal cords weren't made for it, but she learned to shape concepts with tone, posture, and partial words. The first time she repeated "safe," after he said it, her eyes glowed softly. That night she curled beside him without prompting. She no longer reacted with instinct alone. When faced with a trapped creature, one of the small scavengers common in the jungle, she didn't pounce. She brought it to Elias, cradled gently in her jaws. He freed it. She watched it scurry away, then looked at him with something close to pride. Elias reinforced her growth with consistent feedback. Praise came in tone and touch. Corrections were calm, never angry. She absorbed patterns, remembered outcomes. Her violent tendencies didn't disappear, but they evolved. She began to apply restraint. Tension still ran beneath her skin, but it was directed, shaped, focused. He introduced her to abstract ideas: loyalty, mercy, honor. At first, she tilted her head at the words, confused. But over time, they stuck. When a storm cracked the sky and a branch crushed Elias' arm, she didn't panic. She lifted the debris, dragged him back inside, and stood guard the entire night. No command. No instruction. Just choice. Elias recorded everything. Her progression wasn't linear, but it was exponential. Her psionics became more stable, no longer bursting uncontrollably. She could dampen her aura to avoid scaring wildlife, and focus it into a directional field to sense danger ahead of time. Once, she warned him of a cave-in hours before it happened. When he asked her how she knew, she simply said, "Feel." The term, cub, no longer fit her. She was a force in motion, sentient, self-aware, and rapidly evolving. Elias saw it clearly now. She wasn't just a success. She was becoming more than her species' brutal heritage. And it wasn't because of mutation or biology. It was because someone taught her a different way to live. The transformation wasn't only in her. Elias changed too. He stopped thinking of her as a subject. He stopped documenting her for science. Now, his journals were for her. Lessons she could reread. Memories she could keep. He didn't know how long he would survive, but he knew she would outlive him. She needed more than strength to survive the galaxy. She needed identity. He gave it to her in pieces, through storytelling, games, shared meals. Through long moments of silence where nothing needed to be said. Through the act of believing she was more than her bloodline, more than a weapon. Then, one day, while reviewing an old Earth map together, she placed a clawed finger over the image of a lion and asked clearly, "Protector?" Elias nodded. "Yes." She sat back on her haunches, tail curling, gaze steady. Then she said, "I protect." It wasn't mimicry. It wasn't training. It was truth. Sarah was no longer just a companion. She was a phenomenon. At nearly 3 meters tall, her form radiated power, sleek muscle, refined movement, a calm but ever-present threat beneath the surface. Her fur shimmered faintly with shifting patterns, evidence of refined psionic control. She spoke in broken but clear phrases, understood abstract strategy, and operated advanced equipment. What began as survival had evolved into shared purpose. Elias didn't guide her anymore. He partnered with her. They had mapped a third of Velcaretha's hemisphere, catalogued over 200 new species, and stabilized 3 unstable geothermal zones using scavenge tech. Sarah had become essential to everything. But their time in isolation ended when a Krex Dominion scout vessel broke atmosphere. The Krex were an ancient empire with deep religious ties to the Empress Felines, considering them divine extensions of strength and spirit. Finding a living cub, especially one matured beyond natural limits, was unprecedented. Sarah wasn't a scientific curiosity to them. She was a symbol, a relic, an opportunity. The Krex demanded custody. Elias refused. Diplomatic pressure escalated. A tribunal was convened on neutral ground, the station ship Virex Ascendant, orbiting the Krex border world of Thrail. Hundreds of species sent envoys. The case was clear-cut under Dominion law. Sarah was of royal blood, abandoned or not. Her return was mandated. Sarah remained silent as arguments raged. The tribunal treated her like an object. Elias saw it in her posture, tight shoulders, flicking tail, narrowed gaze. She understood what they were doing. She understood more than they assumed. Elias spoke last. His voice was calm but unshakable. He explained what had happened, not with excuses, but with facts. He told them of the moment he found her, the choices she made, the words she learned. He recounted how she chose to spare, to build, to defend. He made no appeals to law, only to conscience. "She is not mine," he said. "She is hers. What she's become, none of you made that. She did. I helped. That's all." Silence followed. The tribunal's presiding voice turned to Sarah. Under protocol, the subject could speak. Sarah stood. Her voice was gravel-edged, careful, shaped for meaning. "I was born in blood. Left in death. He gave neither. Gave name. Gave path. I chose. I choose now." She turned to Elias. "Protector. Blood of none. Father of fire." Then she looked back at the tribunal. "I stay." That moment broke tradition. The Krex couldn't argue against choice made in sovereignty. The ruling was adjusted. Sarah would be considered independent. Not property. Not heir. The first of her kind to claim identity without throne or decree. The result sparked debate across systems. Sarah's image, towering, poised, intelligent, was broadcast across hundreds of colonies. To many, she was proof of a shift in the balance of species. Not because of what she was, but because of what she chose to be. Shortly after, humanity extended an offer: join their diplomatic protectorate program. Syrah accepted. Not as a soldier, but as a peace presence. Her mere appearance changed negotiations. Her restraint, not her power, gained her respect. When warlords tested her, she responded only when civilians were in danger. Her response was swift, decisive, and minimal. Elias, ever in the background, recorded, advised, and adjusted. He built tailored systems for her, armor that responded to her psionics, interfaces she could command without words. She trusted no one else with the tech. When a team tried to duplicate his methods, Syrah ignored them. She didn't want handlers. She wanted kin. The galaxy began to whisper her name in reverence and caution. Not just for her abilities, but for what she represented. A creature bred for domination, raised by a species defined by empathy and stubborn morality. She was their mirror, but sharper. A lens that forced other civilizations to examine themselves. And behind her, always, was the human who had refused to let tradition decide fate. They operated without ceremony. Mission to mission, world to world, building reputation not through propaganda, but through consistency. Syrah intervened only when necessary. She protected diplomats, secured refugee corridors, defused crises with a single glance or, when needed, a roar that shook the spine. She spoke sparingly in public. But when asked why she served, her answer was always the same. Because he did not leave me. Her presence redrew political lines. Alliances shifted. Species who once ignored human values began incorporating them into policy. Not because of treaties. Because they feared what might come next if they didn't evolve. Syrah was never claimed by humanity. But she was undeniably shaped by it. And the galaxy would never be the same. Syrah's influence wasn't measured by fleets or firepower. It was in the way leaders paused when her name entered a room, how warring species began to speak before striking, how even pirates avoided zones she was known to patrol. In a galaxy carved by hierarchy, she disrupted the natural order. Not by rebellion, but by redefining what strength could be. When the Laanari Compact collapsed under civil unrest, refugees flooded into neutral zones. Borders buckled. Factions threatened to weaponize desperation. Syrah was deployed as an observer under human sanction. Within hours of arrival, the violence slowed. She didn't issue commands. She didn't posture. She merely walked the camps, spoke with survivors in broken common tongue, and helped rebuild what no one else would touch. At a ration dispute turned riot, she stepped between opposing mobs. Claws retracted, voice low, she said, "You run from fire. Now you burn each other?" Silence fell. Weapons dropped. No one questioned her authority. They couldn't. It wasn't imposed, it was earned. Word of her actions spread fast. Not through broadcasts or official channels, but from voices on the ground. Colonists, traders, even smugglers spoke of the beast who brought peace. Her legend grew. But with it came opposition. Not all empires welcomed her impact. The Zyr Syndicate, whose power depended on systemic fear, saw her as a threat to their control. They engineered an ambush on a diplomatic convoy under her protection. 5 assault craft, cloaked, armed with gravitic disruptors. They expected panic. They got precision. Syrah intercepted their approach before sensors picked them up. Her psionic field surged, overwhelming their systems. She boarded the lead ship alone, neutralized its crew in under a minute, and sent a single message. "Try again, and none return." The remaining ships fled. No retaliation followed. The Syndicate never acknowledged the loss. Yet with every demonstration of force, Syrah refined her restraint. She understood now that violence created ripples. Elias had once told her, "The greatest threat is one who doesn't need to prove it." She lived that truth. Her fearsome presence became a deterrent rather than a tool. That, more than anything, changed minds. In high-level assemblies, she began to speak more. Her language skills had sharpened. She could hold a room with 3 words. Once, during peace talks between rival mining factions, tensions rose over disputed territory. Syrah stood and simply said, "This land does not bleed for you." The room fell quiet. The deal was signed within the hour. Her growing command of speech surprised many. They had expected a brute, a weapon in fur and fangs. What they got was clarity sharpened by will. She didn't argue. She stated. And when she did, few dared contradict her. Elias remained at her side through it all. Older now, slower, but still her anchor. He handled logistics, advised diplomats, diffused human skepticism. Many couldn't accept what Syrah had become. They saw only what she represented, another species rising in a way that disrupted long-standing power structures. Some feared she'd turn. That she'd lead her kind in conquest. But Syrah never spoke of return. Not once. She refused every invitation from Empress Feline warlords. She denied biological claims. Her only allegiance was to the values she'd chosen: protection, justice, and autonomy. She wasn't human, but she had adopted humanity's highest principles, reshaped through her unique lens. She didn't echo human culture, she elevated it. Took what was strongest, stripped it of ego, and demonstrated it in action. When asked by a galactic correspondent why she never sought revenge against the pride that abandoned her, her reply was simple. They gave me breath. He gave me meaning. Why would I hate the lesser gift? Her words echoed across every broadcast channel, dissected in universities, turned into philosophy modules. She wasn't trying to lead a movement. But she became one. As more Empress Feline cubs were discovered, others began questioning the old laws of abandonment. A faction rose within their own society, inspired not by weakness, but by what Syrah had become. She was living proof that tradition could be wrong. That mercy was not the enemy of strength. And as that idea spread, regimes began to change, not out of fear of conquest, but out of a desire to survive the future she represented. A future where dominance was no longer enough. By then, even Elias admitted she had surpassed everything he believed was possible. "She's not my student anymore," he told a reporter. "She's my successor. For what we could be." Elias didn't live to see the summit. His health had been failing, a quiet decline he never vocalized. Syrah noticed before anyone else. The faint stagger in his gait. The longer rests. The way his voice softened around the edges. When he finally collapsed during transit to the Ardent Accord Assembly, she caught him before he hit the floor. He whispered one request. "Finish what we started." He died 2 days later in a medical bay orbiting Drix 9. No ceremony. No final speech. Just silence and the hum of machines. Syrah didn't weep. Her kind had no biological reflex for grief. But she refused to leave the station for 9 cycles. She stood by his resting place until his ashes were released into a gravity-free orbit over the same jungle world where they'd first met. After that, something shifted. She spoke less but acted faster. When envoys came to express condolences, she acknowledged them with nods and quiet affirmations but avoided platitudes. When asked if she would continue Elias' mission, she responded only once. It was never his alone. She didn't retreat into mourning. She doubled her efforts. The summit, long planned but always delayed due to interfaction hostility, was pushed forward by her direct initiative. For the first time in recorded history, representatives from 12 hostile species, including the Krex, Zyrr, and Empress Feline war clans, agreed to appear in the same room under one banner. Syrah was not listed as a participant. She was the convener. No weaponry was permitted. No guards. Only dialogue. The neutral space station used for the summit bore no planetary affiliation. The rules were simple: speak honestly, listen fully, act decisively. Syrah introduced them herself, short phrases delivered with absolute clarity. "You are here because everything else failed. Do not waste this chance." The talks were tense, frayed by centuries of bloodshed and betrayal. Accusations flew. Tempers flared. But each time discord threatened collapse, Syrah interjected, not with threats, but with facts. She reminded them what had been lost. What had been gained. What still teetered. Her presence forced accountability. When one delegate attempted to excuse a massacre as collateral history, she named each of the dead from that day, by species and age. Not from memory. From respect. Silence followed. No one dismissed her words again. Through 28 sessions, she moderated without favor. Her only allegiance was stability. Her neutrality was not a shield, it was a discipline. She didn't flinch when former enemies insulted her kind. She didn't react when humans suggested she was an outlier, not a model. She responded only with action. In the final session, terms were proposed: shared patrol routes, cultural exchange programs, interdiction protocols against external threats. No alliances, no unified government. Just a foundation. It was more than anyone expected. And then came the unexpected petition, from the youngest Krex ambassador present. He proposed that Syrah be formally named as Guardian Emerita of the Accord, a symbolic but binding title never before granted to a non-aligned entity. The chamber hesitated. The title implied both trust and legacy. Syrah accepted, but rewrote the definition. Not symbol, she said. Standard. If I fall, another must rise. Not like me. Better. The title was ratified. In the months that followed, young members of various species began requesting admission into what became known as the Pathwork Initiative, a mentorship network based on Elias' teachings and Syrah's model. The curriculum was rigorous: ethics, strategy, restraint, dialogue. Not military training, but peacekeeping designed for volatile systems. Syrah herself selected the first group. She taught one session, then disappeared. She didn't vanish entirely. She simply stepped back. No broadcasts. No public statements. Only stories of a great feline figure walking the rim worlds, mediating disputes in silence, lifting crash transports with a single claw, speaking only when needed. Some claimed she had returned to Velkareth. Others believed she wandered the starless corridors beyond mapped space. But the truth didn't matter. Her myth had taken root, but her legacy was practical. The systems she helped design functioned. The diplomacy she inspired held. And every year, on the date of Elias' passing, a silent beacon pulsed over the jungle moon where he first found her. No words. Just coordinates. A reminder. She was not the end of a story. She was its turning point.